my sermon for today. And the topic of this sermon is hijacked. The topic of this sermon is hijacked. You know, talking about the war that is going on, I like to keep myself updated about what is happening in the world and also learn about history. I've always been interested in history back in school. There was actually a time that I thought of becoming a historian, but it just doesn't pay enough. So I decided not to do it. And I also liked engineering, so I went for engineering instead. And even though right now I'm an engineer, when I'm working, a lot of the times I'll be listening to history documentaries, learning about the way that people lived back in the day, the laws that were around, the governments, the way they were ruling, the different struggles and challenges that these people were going through. And then also the important people of those days, the lives that they lived. And I remember one day I was listening to a podcast about this guy, a very powerful guy, learning about his life, and I found out something very interesting and also disturbing. And I thought there's something important to learn from his life. Please sing Yeshua's name. Amen. I want to kick us off with just a couple of questions, please. Who here wants to be powerful? Who wants to rule over a large population of people? To have unchallenged authority over people? Who wants to rule the world, if you may? Who wants to be responsible of the death of 11 million people? None of us wants that, right? That is too much for us. Okay, but who just wants to be respected? Who wants to be remembered when they leave this earth? Who wants to leave the mark upon this world? Who wants people to look at them and have some kind of admiration? Who just wants to matter to people? That's something that many of us can relate with. That is something that many of us, we may want. We may not want to be responsible for the death of millions, but we just want to be remembered in a good light. None of us wants to be remembered as the man with the iron heart or the woman with the iron heart. But we just want to be remembered for something good. Well, guess what? Let me introduce you to someone called Reinhard Heydrich. He was the chief lieutenant of the SS, a very powerful division in the German military in World War II. They were feared for their brutality. They were hated for their brutality. And he was second in command in that whole division. You have to be a special kind of brutal, a special kind of evil to be leading people like this. To be in charge of people that are so feared for how brutal they were. Please sing Yeshua's name. Amen. This man was so evil, he was so brutal, that even Hitler thought that this guy needed to chill out. Hitler had a special name for this guy. He called him the man with the iron heart. Why? Because he was so brutal. He was so evil. He was the architect of the Holocaust. He's the one who put together the logistics and the steps to make everything happen. He's the one who came up with it, the entire Holocaust. He was directly responsible for the death of 11 million people. He is everything that we do not want to be. He had absolute power over so many people, but we do not want to be like him. He gave orders to the most feared and hated military division. At his command, 18 million people were gathered and taken into death camps, and 11 million would not come out. You see, it all started back in World War I. Hitler always hated the Jews. But in the beginning, he didn't have in his mind that he wants to kill them all. He just wanted them to be driven away from Germany. He just wanted them to be taken away. So in 1933, he started passing out laws that took away their property. He started oppressing them and moving them into ghettos where they're living under armed guard. He was chasing them away from Germany. And what had happened is that when Germany lost the war, they were forced to pay billions of dollars in reparations to other companies. So the economy of Germany was in shambles. Everything was going bad. People were humiliated. And we have an entire country of people that are humiliated, people that just lost the war. And Hitler came up and he gave them a reason. He gave them somebody to blame for everything, and that was the Jews. He started taking away their property. He started oppressing them and doing all these other things. Please sing Yeshua's name. In response to this, more than 100,000 Jews stood up and left Germany. They started running away because they could not live like that. And he blamed them for 5 reasons why Germany lost the wars. Number 1, he accused them for running away from duty. But the thing is, in every war that is ever fought, there will always be soldiers that will put down their arms because they don't want to fight. Right now we have a war in Ukraine and Russia. We have Russian soldiers that are putting down their guns because they don't want to fight. And then 2, he accused them of being too eager to surrender. Because of the people that negotiated for peace, one of the generals was a Jewish general. Number 3, he accused them of profiting from the war. Even though the economy is not good because of the war, even for us today, there's some businesses that are in positions where they're able to make money. And it just so happens that some of these businesses were Jewish-owned businesses. So they started to make money. And then he also accused them of attempting to overthrow the government because there was a revolution and 3 of the leaders happened to be Jews. So he strongly believed that these people are the reason why Germany lost the war. And everybody was swallowing it up. Everybody believed it. They needed someone to blame for the suffering. They needed someone to blame for the humiliation. And that is the thing about us people. We believe in blame. When something goes wrong, we want to blame people. We want to hold someone responsible for it. Not us, but we want it to be on somebody else. Because it makes us feel good. We have this powerful urge to point fingers at people. But the thing is, God is not glorified when we're pointing fingers. God is not glorified when we're putting blame on people, on each other. Only the devil is glorified in situations like that. If you open with me to Ephesians chapter 4, verse 26 to 27. Ephesians 4, 26 to 27. It says, "In your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry. And do not give the devil a foothold." When we burn with anger and cast blame on people because of things that are going wrong, we're giving a foothold to the devil. When just one person allows this bitterness to be in their heart, when just one person is giving a foothold to the devil to come into him, a lot of things are bound to go bad. But here we have an entire nation of people that are bitter, an entire nation of people that are angry, and they're blaming it on a race of people. So disaster was bound to come. Peace in Yeshua's name. Hitler convinced the people that Germany could never rise again if the Jews are around. The economy could never improve if the Jews profiting from it. And Germany could never see a victory if the Jews in the military. So all the Jews had to be cast away. They had to be removed away from Germany. Peace in Yeshua's name. Those who could not move, they were gathered together and they were forced to live in ghettos. They were forced to live under armed guard. Everything was taken away from them. And that is how life was for them. But then now, 9 years later, in 1942, when the war is now raging in World War II, Germany had expanded. It had taken over so many places. The same places that a lot of the Jews were running away to when they were leaving Germany. So that idea of chasing them away was not working anymore. Because just a couple months later, the Jews that moved 100 miles away, they're now in Germany again. So Hitler decided that something effective has to be done about these people because he did not want to see them. So he ordered a final solution to be put together. And our man Reinhard Heydrich was in charge of the final solution. What was his final solution? Exterminate them all. Wow. Kill all the Jews for once and for all. Peace in Yeshua's name. Go ahead and play that video.
Auschwitz-Birkenau was the largest extermination center created by the Nazis. It has become the symbol of the Holocaust and of willful, radical evil in our time. The album you will see presented here is known as the Auschwitz album, and it is the only surviving visual evidence of the process of mass murder at Auschwitz-Birkenau. The album is unique. There is not a similar album of its kind in the entire world. It documents, in photos from every direction and from every angle, the arrival at Auschwitz, the selection of those slated for immediate death, and of the few who were destined to be slave laborers, the confiscation of their property, and the preparation for the physical annihilation of a transport of Jewish people. This transport of Hungarian Jews from the area of Carpatho-Ruthenia arrived at the ramp of the extermination camp Auschwitz-Birkenau in May 1944. In the photos, we see the men, women, and children step out of the overcrowded train, traumatized and fearful after their horrendous journey. They have no clue that they have just been delivered to a death factory and that few of them will survive. Survivor and Nobel Peace Prize laureate Elie Wiesel described his arrival as a teenager at Auschwitz. Every yard or so, an SS man held his gun trained on us. Hand in hand, we followed the crowd. Men to the left, women to the right. 8 words spoken, indifferently, without emotion. 8 short, simple words. For a part of a second, I glimpsed my mother and my sister moving to the right. I saw them disappear into the distance, while I walked on with my father and the other men. I did not know that at that place, at that moment, I was parting from my mother and my sister forever. The selection process carried out by SS doctors and wardens took place 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, as train after train unloaded its human cargo. Most Jews were sent immediately to the left, to their death. The undressing rooms of the gas chambers were not sufficient for the masses of Hungarian Jews who arrived daily in the summer of 1944. They therefore had to wait until the undressing rooms were ready to absorb them. The common waiting place was the grove closest to the crematorium that would soon turn their bodies to ash. They were told to sit among the trees and wait for further instructions. These were their last peaceful moments together before being driven into the gas chambers and murdered. It has been said that there will never be people as innocent as the victims on the threshold of the gas chambers. The SS kept the victims destined for gassing in complete ignorance of what lay in store for them. They were told that before being placed in the camp, they had to be disinfected and washed. They would soon discover that what they had assumed were the shower areas were actually hermetically sealed gas chambers. A minority of Jews was selected for forced labor. Their personal belongings were confiscated, their hair was shaved, and a registration number was tattooed on their left arm. In the words of survivor and author Primo Levi, for the first time we became aware that our language lacks words to express this offense, the demolition of a man. It is not possible to sink lower than this. Nothing belongs to us anymore. They have taken away our clothes, our shoes, even our hair. If we speak, they will not listen to us, and if they listen, they will not understand. They will even take away our name, and if we want to keep it, we will have to find in ourselves the strength to do so. It is in this way that one can understand the double sense of the term extermination camp. The work of sorting the possessions that the Jews brought with them to Auschwitz was done by Jewish prisoners who were forced to collect the packages and sort the items that would then be sent to the Reich. By the time the sorting was completed, most of the previous owners were already dead. No memory of the men, women, and children that were deemed valueless upon their arrival remains in camp records. This album is the sole witness to their fate. The Auschwitz album was discovered after the war by Lily Jacob, a survivor of the transport pictured here. Lily gave the album to Yad Vashem, where she knew that its tragic contents would be safeguarded for posterity and shared with generations to come.
Peace against his name. 18 million men, women, and children were loaded like animals into those trains to death camps. 11 million of them died. They were worked to death, starved to death, experimented on, gassed to death, and mowed down with machine guns. They were erased from the face of the earth. And that was all Reinhardt's plan. He came up with all of this. He put all of this together. You heard the SS guards that were conducting all of this. Those were his men who were doing that. And the crazy thing about Reinhardt is that he wasn't even racist against Jews. He wasn't even anti-Semitic. He didn't even care about politics. But how did a non-political, non-Jew hating person end up being responsible for the death of millions of Jews? Reinhardt just wanted to be respected. He just wanted to be remembered. He just wanted to be admired. He just wanted to leave an impact. Just like you and I. What do you think about that? He didn't start out saying that he wants to kill millions, no. He started out wanting to build a name for himself. But he ended up doing things like this. If we take a moment to learn the lives of these people, to see the way that they thought, it can teach us something about ourselves. We can see how the devil can move into our hearts and hijack our otherwise innocent and noble desires and turn them into something that is evil, something that is tragic, something that does not honor God in any way. Reinhardt figured that a good way for him to earn a name for himself was to join the Navy, the German Navy. We know many people who have joined the army because they want to make a difference in this world, because they want to contribute to the country. That was one of them, Reinhardt. But when he was in the Navy, the bad thing is that he was a womanizer. He couldn't stay with one woman. You go from woman to woman. And then he got involved with the general's daughter. He messed around with her and she started pressuring for engagement because she had lost her dignity to him. But he would not do that. So what he did instead was just secretly engage to her while nobody else knows, just to keep her quiet. And he keeps on going around womanizing. And then he met another woman that he thought was very beautiful. Her name was Lena. After some time, he decided that he's going to settle down and be with Lena. So he publicly engaged to Lena while keeping the other engagement secret. So when the other lady found out, she was heartbroken and she ran to her father, who was a general. And because of this, Reinhardt was kicked out of the Navy. This was a very low point in his life for a man who had joined in there to make a name for himself. He was living in a country that was globally humiliated. The only thing in Germany that was somewhat respected was the German Navy. Why? Because in the previous war, they had fought the British Navy, which was the most powerful navy for the past 300 years, and it was a draw. There was no victor on top. They lost the war, but nobody knew which navy was the most powerful. So the German king ordered his navy to go and attack the British Navy and give them all they got just to see who would win, even though the war was over. The generals are like, no, we're not wasting our lives like that. We're not doing that. So they disobeyed the order. And then as part of the peace treaty, they were ordered to hand over all their ships, all their warships to the British who had defeated them in the war. And the generals were like, well, no, we're not doing that either. So what did they do? They burned down the ships instead. This made them heroes in the eyes of the people. It made them patriots in the eyes of the people. It made them respected in the eyes of the people. And Reinhardt got kicked out of that same navy. So he was distraught. He was at a very low point of his life. He's the same guy that just wanted to be respected, the same guy that just wanted people to look at him with admiration. But now he's kicked out, and he lost everything. The only thing that he had was Lena, who for some reason decided to stay with him, even though she found out that he was secretly engaged. So they quietly got married. When they got married, it was the same time that Hitler was just getting into power. And he was starting to intoxicate people with their lies, that the reason that we lost the war in the first place was because of the Jews. Reinhardt had nothing to do with politics. He was not anti-Semitic. But his wife, Lena, was part of the Nazis. She has always hated the Jews. She was a devoted member of the Nazis. And at this time, the thing that we don't know is that Hitler was actually a pretty good leader. Under his leadership, the German economy was recovering rapidly. Life was getting better. things were improving. Germany went from shambles and was becoming a global power once again. So the Nazis, they were becoming saviors of Germany, because the leader of the Nazis is taking Germany right from the dirt. So if you wanted respect again, the Nazis were where you needed to be. Everyone who was tired of not having a job, you had to be a Nazi. Everyone who wanted to redeem the honor of Germany joined the Nazis. Everyone who wanted growth and change in the country had to be part of the Nazi movement. But a pillar of this movement was harassment for the Jews. It was hatred for the Jews, mistreatment of the Jews. But again, Reinhard was not political, so he wasn't part of it. He didn't hate Jews like that, so he wasn't part of it. But again, he also wanted some respect. At that time, the SS, the people that were doing these things, they were just a police force at this time. And their founder wanted an intelligence division, so he wanted a guy to head that intelligence division. And Lena happened to know someone on the inside. She had a family member who knew the owner of the SS. So she got an interview for her husband. So Reinhard went for the interview and he managed to impress the guy on the first day and he got the job right on the spot. Again, he was in it because he wanted the respect that came with it. He wanted to be counted among the saviors of Germany. Even though he didn't hate Jews, even though he was not political, but just like that, he was now on board with everything. He was now on board with a group of people that ended up killing millions of people. Even though he didn't necessarily identify with them. When he started the job, he actually hated the job. He didn't like it. He had to share an office with another guy in a cramped little room. He had to share a desk with a person. And he didn't like that part. But there was a promise of honor in it. There was a promise of respect. And that is why he stuck around. Hitler had passionate hate for the Jews. And Hitler was the guy to impress. If you wanted to impress Hitler, you had to be brutal to the Jews. And Reinhard quickly learned that. If you want to climb up to the top, you gotta be impressive in your brutality. You gotta be outstanding in the things you do. So he became very good at it. He became very devoted to it. He became a picture-perfect German, excellent in devotion to killing the enemies of the state. That is how we ended up killing so many people. Because he was just in it to be remembered and to be respected. And if you and I are not watchful, the devil can also come into us and hijack our innocent desires and turn them into something that we never planned in the beginning. James 1 verse 14. James 1 verse 14. It says, when tempted, no one should say, God is tempting me, for God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. But each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own desires and enticed. Then after desire is conceived, it gives birth to sin. And sin, when it is fully grown, gives birth to death. Our own desires are the reason we fall into sin. They're the reason we are swept away. The devil cannot have any kind of control on us if we do not have desires. But the thing is, to desire is to be human. James is talking about our evil desires being used to drag us away. But I want to take it a little bit further and let us know that even our good desires can be hijacked. Even our noble desires, our noble intentions can be hijacked and turned around by the devil. Peace in Yeshua's name. Amen. We all know the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. We know how Lot's wife was turned into a pillar of salt when she was running away. We know that story too well. But do we know what happened after that? Do we know what happened to Lot and his daughters? That's Genesis 19, verse 30 to 32. It says, Lot and his two daughters left Zoar and settled in the mountains, for he was afraid to stay in Zoar. He and his two daughters lived in a cave. One day the older daughter said to the younger, our father is old and there is no man around here to give us children, as is the custom all over the earth. Let us get our father to drink wine and then sleep with him and preserve our family line through our father. Peace in Yeshua's name. Let's skip a couple verses down. It says, so both Lot's daughters became pregnant by their father. The older daughter had a son and named him Moab. He is the father of the Moabites. The younger daughter also had a son, and she named him Ben-Ammon. He is the father of the Ammonites. Wow. That's really messed up. That is vile. That is unthinkable. It makes sense that not many of us are willing to talk about this, that we don't really read this, because it is confusing and it is disgusting. But when you look at the intentions behind it, if you look at why this happened, look at the desires that were hijacked. They had just survived the destruction of their home. These two girls grew up in Sodom and the nearby city Gomorrah. That was their whole world. And everything was destroyed. They watched it all get destroyed. As far as they knew, they might have been the last people on the earth. And if they felt that it was their noble responsibility to save their bloodline. And who knows, maybe they're even thinking they're saving humanity. Wow. That is what they thought. Wow. How noble is that? How innocent is that? That is just the perfect setup for the perfect hijack. The devil came in, and their good intention was turned into something disgusting, into something very vile, something that we're not even talking about 4,000 years later, something that we skip over because it is uncomfortable for us to read. Peace in Yeshua's name.
Amen.
And then you look at the life of Paul. He had always been passionate about God, always been strong about the work of God. He wanted to stand for the word of God, to fight for the word of God. He had that burning desire within him from the beginning. Even his noble desires were hijacked by the devil. You know, Paul, before he was converted, he took it upon himself to hunt out Christians wherever they are and persecute them. Acts chapter 9, verse 1 to 2. Acts chapter 9, verse 1 to 2. Then Saul, this is when Saul, when Christianity was just starting. Then Saul, still breathing threats and murder against the disciples of the Lord, went to the high priest and asked letters from him to the synagogues of Damascus, so that if he found any Jews who were of the way, whether men or women, he might bring them bound to Jerusalem. You see, Paul actually put together the first organized efforts to persecute Christians. Before this, there was persecution, but it was random and disorganized. But he went to get authority to put together a kind of task force to round up these Christians, because they were a nuisance. They were defiling the word of God. He wants to stand for God. That is why he's doing this. But he doesn't know that his desire that is noble has been hijacked. It has been taken over. And now suffering is coming from it. Now evil is coming from it. Peace in Yeshua's name.
Amen.
So how then can we make sure that our good desires, our noble desires, are not hijacked into something that is bad? Number one, evil desires are always easier to hijack than good desires. Wow. If your greatest desire is money, it's not going to be too hard for the devil to get you to do something that is very vile and awful for the sake of money. If your greatest desire is power, we know power corrupts. It's not going to be easy to hijack you and get you doing stuff that Hitler did, that this guy did. It'll be a much easier, straightforward path. But we also know that even good desires can be hijacked. So what do we do about that? In that case, the most important thing to know is that our good desires must always be based on the very things of God. They must always be rooted on things of God. And not only that, but if our desires are of God, we will pursue them in ways that are of God. If that intention that you have is good, but the way that you want to carry it out is questionable, then you're liable to be hijacked. You're liable to be taken over into something that is bad. It is pure and innocent to want to be respected and remembered, but it is not of God to gain that respect through the murder of millions. It is noble to want to be respected, but it is not of God to neglect your children, to neglect the emotional needs of your children in the name of respect. It is a good thing to want to stand for the word of God, but it is not of God to fight for him by killing people. God wants to save people, not kill people. Peace in Yeshua's name. The devil may be in the business of hijacking good desires and turning them for evil. But we know in Romans 8, verse 28, it says, we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to his purpose. Peace in Yeshua's name. 11 million Jews were sent to death camps because of the desires of one man that were hijacked. But God turned it around in the end. After World War II, there was enough support for the Jews to be given their own country, their own land, where they're unbothered and chased around. That is how Israel came to be. And today, Israel is one of the most powerful nations in the country. It is a very successful nation. It is actually a miracle that it is as successful as it is in the middle of the desert. All the other countries around it are suffering because of the desert. But God turned the situation around and made good out of it. Peace in Yeshua's name. Amen. The desire of two daughters to continue their bloodline may have been hijacked into something that is vile and shameful. But those two sons grew to become two nations, the Ammonites and the Moabites. Guess who in the Bible was a Moabite? Ruth, the grandmother of David. And Jesus is the son of David. So you can actually trace Jesus to this incident. That is the greatest good that can ever come out of anything. The birth of a Savior, the birth of a Redeemer. Do you see how God was working in the background to turn this thing that we're not willing to talk about into the most amazing thing, the birth of a Savior? Peace in Yeshua's name. And then the man who started the first organized persecution for Christians, he became the most powerful beacon for Christianity after he was turned around. Most of the Bible, most of the New Testament is written by Paul. He gave his life entirely to Christ, to spreading the gospel, to propagating the gospel. We know the Bible as it is today because of the work that he put in when he was turned around. So the devil may hijack us, but we are never too far gone for God to save us, for God to turn the situation around and make good out of it.
Amen.
May our blessing keep you.
Amen.
May his understanding be over you.
Amen.
May he wash over you and fill you with his spirit,
Amen.
so that the enemies cannot turn your good desires into anything that is evil. In Yeshua's name.